Here's something you don't see too often these days. Dr. Fong. This is an old late 80s or early 90s vintage power amplifier. It's made by a company right in the US called Dr. Fong Speaker Works, and I think the guy that owned it, his name was J. Will Fong. He's still around. In fact, I've been talking to him on the forums over at talkbase.com because they had a thread over there about Dr. Fong speakers, and there was no information about an amplifier in there, so I made a post and said, hey, I just bought one of these off eBay in non-working condition. Does anybody know anything about it? And Jay came on there and said, if I remember right, that's 470 watts per channel into 4 ohms. And of course the schematics are long gone. From what I understand, the factory burnt down in like 1993 or something. And he said these were a collaboration between Dr. Fong Speaker Works and SHS Audio in Indianapolis. So it'd be interesting to see if I can get this working. Maybe there's nothing wrong with it other than the fuse holder. What do you say we pop the top and see what's in there? Holy transformer, Batman. No wonder it's so heavy. There's also a pair of old Mallory capacitors in here. Looks like they're 10,000 microfarad, 125 volts. It's either 10,000 or 100,000. I think they're 10,000. And there's 12 transistors per channel. Must be some sort of quasi-complementary type circuit because all the transistors are the same. They're MJ15001, which are still available. In fact, everything in here is probably off-the-shelf parts, and there's not a lot of capacitors in here actually. Not very many at all, and I wouldn't be surprised if the only thing wrong is the darn fuse holder. So let me see if I can, I'm going to have to take this cooling fan out to get to that. I'm going to get that fuse holder taken care of and try to bring this up on the Variac slow and monitor the voltage on the filter caps, make sure everything looks okay, and we'll see what this thing can do. I wonder if I can get at this easier by taking the back panel off. Continuous exposure to high sound pressure levels may result in irreversible loss of hearing acuity. It's definitely not a balanced input stage. It's just plain old unbalanced. What a monster. Well, that was easy enough. Just take out a couple screws and slide the back panel upward in the slots, and the fuse holder comes right at the bottom. Prop it up with a screwdriver. Looks like somebody had changed this fuse holder in the past because the soldering definitely doesn't look factory on that. Finally, that was a lot more work than I wanted it to be. It was like impossible to get my hands in there to put this thing together and get the shrink tubing on there and solder the wires. I mean, I only had about an inch of wire to work with. But I got it in there at least finger tight, good enough for me to use it. And now I'm going to get my Variac and bring the voltage up nice and slow and reform the big filter capacitors, see if they're still in working order. And if everything looks good, I'll bring the voltage up all the way and we'll test this thing out. This is definitely a quasi-complementary output stage because it does have positive and negative supplies, just looking at how the capacitors are connected. But anyway, I've got my meter on DC volts and got it on the left hand filter cap. Power switch is on. Let's bring this Variac up nice and slow and see what happens. I already got 6 volts DC and I barely even brought the Variac up. That's promising. No major shorts yet anyway. I'm going to do this very slow so I reform the caps properly. Well, that's promising. Finally got it up to full voltage. Looks like the power supplies are plus and minus 100 volts. Pretty hefty. So now for the real fun stuff, let's put a signal in and see what happens. Alright, here we go. Let's hope nothing blows up. Sheesh, it actually made the UPS trip for a second. It pulled so much juice. One channel not working. Give me a second. Well, it's certainly not working quite correctly. I got one dead channel and the other channel is not really all that powerful. In fact, I think it's well under 100 watts right now, because that Pioneer amplifier right there was a lot punchier. That's probably why this was pulling so much current when I was bringing up the Variac at first. It probably had a short and then blew some fuses in here, so I gotta look around and see what's going on. Well, like I suspected, I got one shorted channel, and that's going to be a pain because it's a lot of transistors right there, and I think the pre-drivers might even be blown. Guess I'm going to have to start pulling them out and testing them one by one. Well, it wasn't all of them shorted, but there was 2 of them shorted on that channel, and I think there's also a problem on the driver circuit too. So I'm going to be digging into this later on, but for now I got to put it aside because I've got other projects I've got to get done. And I don't know why this pulls so much juice, because when I turn up just this one channel, it dims the lights on my bench. But I'll get back to this at a later time.